Picture the most exclusive yacht club in Miami at golden hour. The sky goes violet and gold. Teak decks catch the last light. A members-only tower looks down on a private basin where brokers shuffle $30 million hulls between hedge fund heirs and visiting royalty. It smells like salt air, expensive sunscreen, and old money. A sanctuary. A walled garden for the ultra-rich. A place where people go to drop off the map. But what if I told you 11 of those megayachts had never actually sailed anywhere? And what if I told you the club's private refit hangar was secretly cutting sealed voids into their keels to stash millions in gold, cash, and untraceable weapons? And what if I told you the shipping manifests for those voids ran straight to a fortified private island compound used by cartel logistics chiefs and foreign intelligence cutouts? What you're about to see is Operation Sunset Keel. Today, step by step, you'll watch the FBI and a massive federal task force raid this maritime sanctuary, freeze $268 million, seize a fortune in buried gold, and rip apart a global smuggling ring. If you think billionaires who turn luxury megayachts into covert smuggling machines belong in a federal penitentiary, you'll want to see exactly how this one cracked. To understand how this empire fell apart, you have to understand the woman who put it together. Our composite subject is Renata Colvin. To the outside world, she was the queen of the Miami coastline, Club Commodore, celebrated marine conservation philanthropist, smiling from the covers of luxury lifestyle magazines, dining privately with governors, donating millions to coastal restoration. If you wanted a berth at her marina, you waited 3 years, and that was only if your name checked the right boxes. But underneath the charity dinners and the glossy PR, Renata was cold, calculating, and ruthless. She didn't just rent dock space. She ran a tight logistical network built to move contraband across international borders without tripping a single maritime customs flag. Her entire empire relied on the illusion of prestige. When you have a 200-foot superyacht, nobody questions what the hull weighs. Renata exploited that silence. She built the scheme piece by piece. 47 shell companies, all buried behind anonymized overseas trusts. 4 front foundations, each claiming to fund artificial reef building and coral restoration. Those fake charities gave her a permanent excuse to haul massive shipments of industrial materials, heavy metals, and unmarked cargo crates right up to the docks. The volume of money she pushed through this system is hard to wrap your head around. Over a decade, Renata laundered millions, using the refit hangar as her personal washing machine. When a wealthy buyer needed illicit goods moved unseen, Renata's team took the yacht into the hangar for a routine refit. They cut open the solid fiberglass keel, hollowed out compartments, sealed the contraband inside, and welded it shut. The manifest said the vessels carried spare anchor chains and marine ballast. They slipped past IRS audits by funneling cash through a boutique bank in the Cayman Islands, 17 private bankers on her secret payroll, 3 harbor masters corrupted, 4 maritime inspectors whose only job was signing off on the falsified tonnage reports. And at the bottom of the whole operation, buried under layers of corporate anonymity, sat a private island compound. This was the hub for cartel logistics chiefs and 2 foreign intelligence cutouts. They used Renata's yachts to smuggle stolen antiquities, military-grade weapons, and narcotics precursors. A fully integrated, $100 million supply chain, hiding in plain sight. If you think an illicit smuggling hub under a prestigious yacht club is as far as this goes, the way they physically moved gold and weapons through the Sunday charity boat auctions will leave you speechless. We'll get to that shortly. Every empire, no matter how well insulated, eventually bleeds from a paper cut. For Renata Colvin, that paper cut was a hazardous waste disposal driver named Marcus. Marcus was a regular working-class guy. He drove a truck for a private industrial waste contractor. 15 years hauling heavy industrial debris from construction sites and shipyards. Every month, Marcus backed up to the loading dock of the yacht club's private refit hangar. His job was picking up the discarded fiberglass and resin debris left over from the hull modifications. By federal law, heavy industrial fiberglass has to go to a specialized facility, and the yacht club had to pay a hazardous waste ticket for disposal. But Marcus noticed something wrong. He'd been hauling fiberglass for years. He knew what it looked like. He knew how much it weighed when it was dumped loosely into a skip bin. The bins coming out of Renata's hangar were off. Way off. Marcus had a digital scale on the back of his truck to verify loads. Month after month, the same pattern. The hangar's official disposal logs claimed a standard volume of fiberglass waste. But when Marcus weighed the bins at the loading dock, The actual fiberglass waste came in at 3 times what the refit log said. Marcus didn't know about the gold. He didn't know about the weapons or the cartel bosses. He just knew someone was lying about the weight of the garbage. He knew that when you cut massive sealed voids into a solid keel, you generate a huge amount of heavy, dense fiberglass dust and resin chunks. And Renata's logs weren't accounting for any of it. He didn't look the other way. He didn't take the tip money and drive off. Marcus pulled out his phone, photographed the bins, logged the exact discrepancy in his logbook, and sent an anonymous tip to the EPA's National Response Center. That $1,200 hazardous waste ticket was the single thread that unraveled an entire decade of global smuggling. That tip landed on a desk at the FBI's Miami field office. It got routed to the Major Offenders Unit. The lead case agent, a veteran investigator we'll call Special Agent Calvin Mercer, read the tip. Most agents would have brushed off a weight discrepancy in a garbage bin. Mercer had spent 20 years hunting money launderers. He knew criminals always make mistakes in the waste stream. You can hide the money, but you can't hide the dust. Mercer opened a preliminary inquiry. He pulled the maritime refit logs for the Yacht Club going back 3 years. Then, through contacts at the Coast Guard, he quietly pulled the actual hull density scans of the modified yachts. A pattern jumped out. The monthly fiberglass tonnage coming out of the Hangar was running at 3.4 times the industry standard, and it spiked precisely across 14 months when 11 specific megayachts were supposedly undergoing routine maintenance. Mercer realized he was looking at a structural smuggling pipeline. He took his findings to the Justice Department. A federal task force was assembled, spearheaded by the FBI, but it quickly pulled in the DEA to track the narcotics precursors. The ATF came on board for the untraceable weapons. Homeland Security investigations and the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network joined to map the money. They called it Operation Sunset Keel. But before they could move, they had to see inside the Hangar. That was their first real obstacle. The Yacht Club was a literal fortress. It sat on a highly secure, private peninsula. The perimeter was lined with military-grade fiber optic intrusion sensors. The dock had thermal imaging cameras covering every inch of the waterline. And Renata Colvin was politically insulated. She golfed with senators. If the FBI kicked the doors in and they were wrong, the political fallout would end careers. They had no probable cause yet for a physical search. They couldn't just raid the place. They had to get creative. Mercer had a plan. HSI deployed an undercover operative disguised as a high-end marine mechanic. Using a carefully built alias, the agent infiltrated Renata's trusted circle of contractors. He worked in the Hangar for 4 months. He didn't look at the books. He just looked at the hulls. During a routine night shift, the undercover agent slipped a borescope, a tiny fiber optic camera, into a drill hole left in the keel of a yacht slated for delivery. The camera fed back a grainy, green-tinted image. It wasn't spare anchor chains. It wasn't marine ballast. It was rows of neatly stacked, untraceable gold bullion wrapped tight in industrial plastic. I spent hours going through the case file, and one detail kept nagging at me: the precision of the engineering. These weren't amateur smugglers hacking holes in a boat. This was aerospace-level milling. The voids were perfectly cylindrical, designed to distribute the weight so the yacht wouldn't list to one side. If you tried to cross the ocean with $10 million in gold sitting unevenly in your keel, the hull would lose structural integrity and split in heavy seas. Renata's engineers were brilliant, but they couldn't hide the sawdust. Meanwhile, NSA and Treasury cyber teams were running dark web probes and a financial honeypot. They tapped into the encrypted broker ledger Renata used to communicate with her clients. They watched buyers from around the globe log in through secure offshore servers to bid on specific yachts. Here's the part that doesn't make sense at first. The yachts weren't being bought for sailing. They were being bought for their smuggling capacity. The clients were purchasing a delivery mechanism. What gets me about this case is how easily our blind reverence for extreme wealth lets networks like this thrive. If you have enough money, own a yacht club, smile at charity galas, the system just assumes you're legitimate. It's a staggering failure of financial oversight that a single garbage truck driver had to do the job of a multi-billion-dollar intelligence apparatus. Before we get into the tactical details of the raid, a quick trivia question. Do you know how much 806 kilograms of gold is worth in today's market? A. $20 million. B. $50 million. C. Over $70 million. The answer will surprise you at the end of the video. With the undercover agent's borescope footage, the Treasury Department finally had ironclad probable cause. The Attorney General signed the federal arrest warrants. The United States District Court issued seizure warrants for the marina, the private island, and the 11 specific yachts. But pulling off the raid was a logistical nightmare. The yacht club was full of innocent civilian staff. Bartenders, chefs, deckhands. Working-class people who had no clue their commodore was running cartel logistics. On top of that, Renata wasn't on site. Intelligence placed her at her private mansion 9 kilometers inland, sealed inside a sophisticated panic room with armed private security. They had to hit the hangar and the mansion at the exact same second. If one team was off by even a minute, the encrypted server would be wiped clean. The plan was total stealth paired with aggressive electronic warfare. The task force deployed 4 specialized tactical teams. The FBI's elite hostage rescue team, heavily armed ATF tactical operators, the U.S. Marshals Special Operations Group, and an HSI raid team. They disguised the approach. Instead of rolling up in marked police cruisers, they used massive, unmarked white box trucks. Stolen logos of a luxury marine linen and laundry service were slapped on the sides. They looked exactly like the daily delivery vehicles that serviced the club. It was a Wednesday. 3:30 a.m. The sky over Miami was pitch black. Alpha Team took the main hangar. Bravo Team secured the exterior docks. Charlie Team handled the civilian security guards. Delta Team, made up of U.S. Marshals and FBI HRT, drove silently toward Renata's inland mansion. At exactly 3:41 a.m., a combined ATF and Secret Service electronic warfare unit parked 2 miles away activated their jamming equipment. They cut the fiber optic cables at the perimeter. Instantly, the yacht club's internal security network crashed. All thermal cameras went offline. All internal drone surveillance feeds went dead. Alpha Team moved. No standard dynamic entry. The rear doors of the laundry truck swung open silently. 8 operators in heavy black plate carriers stepped out. Suppressed rifles. Blinding weapon-mounted lights. They bypassed the external hangar doors using cloned key cards from the undercover agent. Inside the cavernous hangar, they ran into 2 armed guards working for Renata's shell company. FBI! Drop the weapon! Hands in the air! The guards, completely stunned by the sudden appearance of heavily armed federal operators, surrendered instantly. They dropped their sidearms. The operators slapped heavy zip ties on their wrists. Get down on the ground! Do not look up! It took exactly 8 minutes to secure the exterior perimeter of the marina. Inside the main hangar, the real scale of the operation came into focus under the harsh glare of tactical flashlights. The agents found a high-tech milling operation, massive industrial lathes, specialized diamond-tipped cutting tools, heavy-duty vacuum systems built to instantly collect every ounce of fiberglass dust to prevent the exact anomaly Marcus had noticed. But the real discoveries were inside the hulls. Agent Mercer watched as an ATF technician used a hydraulic battery-powered saw to cut through the newly welded access panels on the keel of a yacht named the Neptune Vault. When the titanium door swung open, the smell of industrial grease and raw metal filled the air. Tactical beams lit up the inside of the hull. There, resting in custom-fitted, shock-absorbing foam, were row after row of pristine gold bars. Untraceable. No serial numbers. No mint marks. Just pure, heavy wealth. Near the gold, agents found vacuum-sealed bricks of untraceable, rust-proofed automatic weapons. In another sealed compartment, barrels of unmarked narcotics precursors. In a climate-controlled forward hold, crates of stolen antiquities. FBI, step away from the desk and raise your hands slowly, Delta Team called out as they breached the front door of Renata's inland mansion. At exactly 3:48 a.m., the heavy steel door of the mansion was blown off its hinges by a hydraulic battering ram. Flashbangs exploded in the marble foyer, disorienting the 2 private security guards who reached for their weapons. They were quickly subdued. Renata Colvin was found in a reinforced panic room beneath her master bedroom closet. She had a satellite phone in her hand. She was frantically calling her lawyers, trying to wipe the encrypted broker ledger. The U.S. Marshals used a thermal cutting torch to slice through the panic room's titanium bolts. When the heavy door swung open, Renata sat in a bathrobe, her face completely drained of color. She stared at the heavily armed operators pointing rifles at her. "You have no jurisdiction here," she spat, trying to hold on to her commanding tone. "This is private property. I am a conservationist. I fund coral reefs. Do you know who I am?" The lead deputy marshal stepped forward, voice ice cold. "You're not a philanthropist. You're a money launderer in a tailored suit. The attorney general signed your warrant tonight." The heavy steel handcuffs went on. She was escorted out of her multi-million-dollar estate into waiting black SUVs, the illusion of absolute power broken for good. Back at the yacht club, the human side of the raid started to sink in. The sun was just coming up over the Atlantic, throwing warm, golden light across the bloodless crime scene. The innocent civilian staff were terrified. The line cooks, the young deckhands, the maids who cleaned the luxury cabins. They'd been asleep in the staff quarters when the raid hit. Now they were crying, confused, sitting on the polished teak decks in their pajamas, ringed by heavily armed federal agents. This is where the professionalism of the FBI and HSI agents really showed. Realizing these workers were traumatized, the female tactical agents on Bravo team made a deliberate choice. They took off their ballistic helmets. They took off their sunglasses. They slung their rifles behind their backs. They walked among the shivering staff, speaking softly. They handed out blankets and bottles of water. They set up a triage center right there by the infinity pool. They separated the witnesses from the suspects, making sure no one who was just doing their job felt like a criminal. One agent sat with a young busboy who was shaking uncontrollably, handing him a stuffed toy they'd found in the staff lounge to calm his nerves. They spoke to him in Spanish, reassuring him he was safe, he wasn't in trouble, and the nightmare was over. While that quiet stabilization happened on the pool deck, the forensic accountants and evidence response teams moved into the hangar. They found abandoned laptops, still humming with power. Encrypted hard drives left plugged into the servers. Ledgers packed with shell company routing numbers. A paper trail a mile wide. The agents started the long process of cataloging every single item. Unpopular opinion. The wealthy clients who used Renata's service are just as guilty as she is, maybe worse. She provided logistics. It was the Wall Street executives, the corrupt foreign officials, and the cartel bosses who were actually moving the money and weapons. They hired her to bypass the law. They deserve the same federal supermax sentence she's about to get. By noon, the Miami U.S. Attorney's Office held a massive press conference. The numbers were staggering. The task force had executed a simultaneous raid across 9 different marinas spanning 2 states. 63 individuals were arrested, including Renata's corrupt harbor masters, the shell company bankers, and the aerospace engineers who milled the hulls. $268 million in total contraband value was seized. The IRS and Treasury froze over 50 different bank accounts tied to the 47 shell companies. But the physical haul was the part that really grabbed you. Divers from the Coast Guard and FBI pulled 806 kilograms of pure gold from the submerged and sealed keels of the 11 yachts. What do you think, looking at the scale of this? Was the punishment for the buyers fitting, or did the system let the real power players walk while the front woman took the fall? The court proceedings dragged on for 11 months. Renata Colvin's high-priced defense team came out swinging. They claimed she was the victim of a government witch hunt. They argued religious persecution, saying her donations to marine conservation made her a target. They painted her as a misunderstood businesswoman who simply didn't ask enough questions about her clients. But the prosecution, a razor-sharp team from the DOJ's organized crime and racketeering section, tore that apart. They walked the jury through the evidence. The dark web catalogs. The encrypted server logs clearly showing Renata negotiating prices with cartel bosses. The physical gold, sitting in evidence bags right there in the courtroom. They brought in a forensic biometrics expert who matched Renata's fingerprint to the diamond-tipped cutting tool used to open the keels. And most damning of all, 3 of her co-conspirators took the stand. They flipped the second they realized the death penalty was off the table, but life in a maximum security prison was very much on it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The judge, a strict constructionist who was visibly disgusted by the scale of greed on display, showed no mercy. Renata Colvin was convicted on 27 separate federal counts. This included violations of 18 U.S.C. 1956 for money laundering, massive wire and mail fraud, and, critically, multiple RICO charges for running a continuing criminal enterprise. Standing in her prison jumpsuit, her philanthropic mask stripped away completely, Renata was sentenced to 40 consecutive decades in federal prison. 40 years. She will be over 100 years old before she's eligible for release. No possibility of parole. She was immediately transported to a highly classified federal supermax facility where she'll spend the rest of her natural life in a concrete cell, never seeing the ocean or a megayacht again. But the story doesn't end with her incarceration. The physical aftermath of Operation Sunset Keel meant a complete transformation. The exclusive yacht club, the site of so much silent corruption, was permanently forfeited to the United States government. The Justice Department didn't just flip it to the highest bidder. The entire marina complex was legally converted. It went to the Department of the Interior. Today, it operates as the South Florida Coast Restoration Trust. The millions recovered from asset forfeiture, combined with the auction of the seized yachts, created a lifetime trust fund. That fund now finances large-scale environmental projects. It pays for medical care, education funding, and relocation assistance for victims of the cartels whose precursors were smuggled through those very keels. The physical refit hangar where the gold was hidden was filled with thousands of tons of industrial concrete, permanently entombed. But the most chilling discovery came after the raid. When NSA cyber teams finally cracked the encrypted broker ledger, they uncovered the true scope of Renata's client list. The dark web logs revealed identities that shocked even the most seasoned intelligence veterans. The list included Wall Street CEOs, oligarchs from Eastern Europe, high-ranking foreign politicians, Hollywood producers. 19 of these elite offshore buyers had received a type-off. They scattered across the globe, fleeing to non-extradition territories just hours before the federal arrest warrants landed. But the Justice Department wasn't finished. Interpol activated a global manhunt. Red notices went out for all 19 individuals. Their offshore bank accounts were frozen. Their private jets were grounded. Their reputations were destroyed. Today, no one on that encrypted list will sleep easily. The hunters are still coming. Before we close, back to our trivia. How much is 806 kilograms of gold worth in today's market? The answer is C. Over $70 million. That single haul from just 11 yacht keels was enough sheer weight to tear the whole illusion apart. Looking back, the question isn't how Renata built this empire. The real question is how many more like her are still out there, hiding behind charity galas and polished teak. No fortress is deep enough underwater, no bank account vast enough to shield the people who build these networks from the weight of American justice. If you want to keep watching us pull the threads that the rich and powerful would rather you not see, subscribe to Hoover Files and tell us in the comments which case you'd want us to crack open next. Stay sharp. We'll see you on the front lines.